So if you've been following along, you've seen Mark Douglas, a supposed Aboriginal magistrate, in the media, ABC, state propaganda, narrative, state-funded media, talking about a sovereign citizen problem, inconvenience for the magistrates' court, clogging up the works. And I don't need to speak about David Halpern, as Steve already dismantled him. And fittingly, we're going to be looking at another retired member of a foreign occupying power that seems to, for some reason, made his way out of retirement to talk to the media, which is aimed at softening a blow that they might be served with. But before we do so, let's hear from someone who knows. Tucker Carlson, who just got fired for speaking a little too much truth.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. You often hear people say the news is full of lies, but most of the time that's not exactly right. Much of what you see on television or read the New York Times is in fact true in the literal sense. It could pass one of the media's own fact checks. Lawyers would be willing to sign off on it. In fact, they may have. But that doesn't make it true. It's not true. At the most basic level, the news you consume is a lie of the stealthiest and most insidious kind. Facts have been withheld on purpose, along with proportion and perspective. You are being manipulated. How does that work? Let's see. If I tell you that a man has been unjustly arrested for armed robbery, that is not, strictly speaking, a lie. He may have been framed. At this point, there's been no trial, so no one can really say. But if I don't mention the fact that the same man has been arrested for the same crime 6 times before, am I really informing you? No, I'm not. I'm misleading you. And that's what the news media are doing in every story that matters, every day of the week, every week of the year.
So, thank you, Tucker. Lies by omission. What are the pieces missing? We know that David says there isn't a single case. And now we know that David blocks emails. He doesn't want his delusion to be shattered. But it's too late. It's on New South Wales Supreme Court record. Unless you want to go against a higher court than the magistrate's court, unless you're that deluded that you see yourself as supremo over the Supreme Court. But I digress. Let's hear a little from Peter Costello, who has just bobbed up for some reason.
John, I'll say to you, I think we went far too far during the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
No?
Almost further than any other Western country in terms of expenditures.
I promise you, we will look back on 2020, 2021 in 10 years' time, 20 years' time, and we'll say, wow, we really closed the workplaces? Mm. In some states, curfews?
So, Peter, why are you in front of the media now? What is far too far? Wow. What are curfews? What is looking back in 10 to 20 years? What are you doing talking to the media now? You weren't in office. So why are you speaking to us now? Is it that oath? Is it that usurping crown you served 4 terms? We're gonna find out a little more, I think.
You weren't allowed out of your home after 9 o'clock. We didn't have curfews in the Second World War, by the way. The curfews. We had situations where if you walked around the block on your own, you had to have a mask on your own. But there's no way you can infect somebody if you're walking around the block on your own, by the way, right? We had a situation where you were locked in your house 23 hours a day, given 1 hour. 1 hour.
It is
to
extraordinary.
go outside. You'll look back on it and you say, I mean, how did we put up with that infringement of individual liberty? Well, you see, the government had enormous reach.
We didn't have curfews in World War II when we were fighting Nazi. You have to stay in your home, walking around the block with a mask on. You can't infect anyone. Why, Peter, now? Why are you saying this now? This would have been helpful for the people you supposedly represent. I don't know. Maybe 2 or 3 fucking years ago. But no, now, when you're concerned about getting 1 hour of exercise a day, how did we put up with this? Who's we, Peter? I don't think you are we. I think you serve a foreign curial power. I think you made oath to said power, and now you're trying to soften the blow so you don't end up, I don't know, in a prison like you attempted to put us in. Is that what I see? Am I wrong? I don't think so. The government had enormous reach, like through the media, to reach into your home and fuck you. Peter? Is that what's going on, Peter? You are the reach. You're the breach, I think.
You know, the government had huge media influence. The government was running daily press conferences, giving out body counts, you know, all the time. You know, this idea that if you went out of your house for more than an hour a day, right, you know, you could die. Or worse, you could infect someone who would die. But somehow, if you only went out for 59 minutes, you know, you were going to be safe. I mean, we'll look back and we'll say, "Wow, gee, did we all, you know, kids that weren't allowed to go to their parents' funerals, you know."
Daily body counts. Yeah, we remember the numbers. We remember the reach. We remember the fear. Then you say, Peter, that we'll look back. Well, who again are the we? We haven't forgotten. We remember. We remember being shot at on holy ground. Our ground. With our stone. With our shrine. We remember. You'll look back. If you're lucky. Kids who weren't allowed to go to their parents' funerals. Children. Interesting, Peter, that you tell us some truths, that you represent a foreign curial power that sees the people it supposedly represents as children that need to be nannied. We weren't allowed to go to our parents' funerals. But this wasn't you, was it, Peter? Didn't you retire a long time ago? Why are you coming out now? Is it that oath that comes back to bite you, Peter? Open wide. Come inside.
I think you were allowed something like 7 or 8 people, something like that, at a funeral, right? You weren't allowed to say goodbye to loved ones who were dying. And to me, this would have been unthinkable, I think, in the Second World War. This kind of infringement on individual, even though we were at war, we didn't have curfews. But because the reach of the state now is so much greater, the public just by and large took it. Mind you, the police were out arresting anybody who broke any of these rules, right?
Pregnant women.
A pregnant woman, put up on social media that there was going to be a demonstration. As it turned out, entirely lawfully. Police come into her home, put her in handcuffs, take her off to the police station, right? Enforcing the law.
So again, this reference to us as children, we weren't allowed to say goodbye to our loved ones. And this strange fixation, it would seem, on World War II. That's a whole story in itself. That's a whole other rabbit hole, isn't it, Peter? Whose war that was. But Peter says, police enter a pregnant woman's home for posting about a protest, completely lawfully, and they put her in handcuffs. This enforcing the law, quotation marks. What slavery, Peter? And then again, open wide. Come inside the mind of a guilty conscience. Can't help himself but to try to soften the blow. Because we know, Peter, we will look back in 10 or 20 years. You, well, might be a different story.
It was just intimidation. As it turns out, there's no charge that the charge got dropped, right? But it was just intimidation. The police might come into your home and they might arrest you. And, I think for some people too, I better not say anything about this, because if I do say something about this, who knows, could be reported. I think we'll look back and we'll say this was a massive overreaction. Now,
it was just intimidation. It was just intimidation, Peter? It was just intimidation. It was just police entering your home. But there's some people that better not say. They could be reported. And we're going to look back and think it was an overreaction. An overreaction to war crimes? To slavery? What's an impossibility? Could there be an overreaction, Peter? And why do you keep opening up and saying, a guilty mind, perhaps? Methinks so.
the economic cost is there to stay. We'll see that for a long period of time. Now, what are we going to learn out of this? Because there's going to be another pandemic, by the way.
Of course there is. Or some sort of crisis.
There'll be another pandemic.
An economic cost, all right, to be felt. By whom? And then there's going to be another pandemic or some sort of crisis. Oh, little Peter, are we the pandemic? Are we the crisis? Is that why you built fences around Parliament to protect your fractured line of authority? Peter? Is that why your government, 4 terms, disarmed the people who are supposed to represent the people you knew were harmless, you left armless? Why would that be? Why, oh why? Could it be that you saw this moment coming and you knew what we would do lawfully, curiously standing in a line of authority? Peter, defined on Supreme Court record.